In the final episodes of the third season of Attack on Titan, Levi is faced with a significant choice: to save Erwin Smith, commander of the Scout Regiment with the serum, or Armin Arlert, a brilliant soldier from the same regiment. Levi ultimately chooses the latter, but it's evident from his words that his decision was driven by personal reasons rather than a logical consideration of saving humanity. In fact, his emotional and reverential bond with Erwin led him to let him die, as he saw in him a tired man who no longer deserved to return to that hell. However, he also considered that by saving Armin, he was keeping a highly valuable soldier alive. Not just anyone. Both Armin and Erwin have proven to be essential to the operations of the Scout Regiment, so the question I want to address in this video is, who should Levi have saved to provide, presumably, the greatest benefits to humanity? To answer this, I'll take into account the parameters I consider most important in this context, namely, personality, both strengths and weaknesses, intelligence, their role, including relationships within the group, and replaceability. The easier someone is to replace, the less critical it is to lose them. I'll specify how much one surpasses the other in each of these areas, whether slightly, moderately, or significantly. And I'll remember that Armin has a greater potential for improvement, which I'll consider when necessary. Of course, I'll only examine the events of the anime up to that point and will distance myself from Levi's perspective, as he doesn't have a complete picture of the events. If you enjoy this approach, feel free to like and subscribe so you won't miss other projects. Let's proceed step by step. Personality. During battles, Erwin has first and foremost shown great determination in achieving his goal. Just think of when a giant bites off his arm, something that would terrify and make anyone scream in pain. However, he continues looking ahead and urges the soldiers to move forward as he's carried away from death, which ultimately doesn't come. I'm not sure if he was the one to kill the giant, but it seems unlikely with just one arm. Because of this behavior, he's perceived as authoritative and charismatic by his comrades, so much so that he led most of the army to their deaths with a single speech. Of course, I'm referring to the charge against the Beast Titan. Another reason is his calmness and composure in extremely dangerous situations. We rarely see him shocked by anything. He's a man capable of standing just a few meters from the armored Titan, staring him down. During his last conversation with Levi, it becomes clear that he cares about his men, or at the very least, feels responsible for their lives. He expresses this by talking about his guilt over the mountain of corpses he's left in pursuit of his dream to uncover the truth about the outside world. If I had to find a flaw in Erwin, there's one occasion where he came off as authoritarian rather than authoritative. This happens when two soldiers, after an expedition beyond the walls, ask to go back to retrieve the body of a fallen comrade. A heated discussion ensues, and Erwin only steps in at the end, saying, "I've already ordered him to be reported missing, so the matter is closed." This method of communication would obviously create further discontent. In fact, the soldiers then went back on their own, attracting the Titans. It would have been much better to explain the reasoning behind that decision. However, I want to point out two things. First, the soldiers making the request weren't exactly polite, so Erwin may have been angry. Second, this was a unique incident. I can't recall other episodes where he acted like this. So, let's simply keep this event in mind as a small minus. To summarize, Erwin possesses determination, authority, charisma, composure, and calmness in dangerous situations. He also feels guilt over the deaths of his men, which is both a virtue and a flaw, and in one instance he acted authoritatively. Let's move on to Armin. It's clear that he, at least on the surface, appears to be a more fragile person, starting with his self-deprecation, believing he's never up to certain decisions, and moving on to his crippling anxiety. Think back to the first mission, the defense of Trost, where he trembles so much that he can't even refill his gas, let alone grasp the situation clearly, falling into a tragic pessimism. But that was his first mission. Not that this aspect of him disappears throughout the story, but it's certainly alleviated by continuous exposure to these kinds of situations. We can therefore consider it likely that he'll continue to improve in the future. However, this flaw helps us understand just how strong his courage is. To go on a mission, he must fight against this part of himself, unlike others. Not that this, in itself, is an added value to the Scout Regiment. After all, everyone there has great courage. But it is when combined with his empathy. Armin is always ready to sacrifice himself for others. Remember when he volunteered to stay without a horse among the Titans, or when he faced Berthold? He easily puts himself in the shoes of both comrades and enemies. Even caring about one's own life isn't an instinct to despise. He says to Berthold, when he confesses his desire to join the military police. This empathy leads him to feel guilty when he kills the female soldier who was about to kill Jean, or when his comrades torture someone just because they don't share their views. Additionally, he has a pacifist tendency that makes him a perfect mediator, trying to please everyone and resolving conflicts at the root. We'll talk more about this later. To sum up, Armin's strengths are self-sacrifice, courage plus empathy, and a tendency to mediate, while with experience all his flaws diminish. The flaws we mentioned include debilitating anxiety, guilt toward enemies, which isn't entirely negative considering it fuels his tendency to mediate, and self-deprecation. From this perspective, I believe Erwin has a moderate advantage, especially considering the fast-paced and decisive nature of events, which doesn't leave much room to lean toward Armin and wait for him to improve. Erwin approaches perfection in this regard. I don't attribute a strong advantage to him because it was foreseeable that they would soon face people from outside the walls, where he wouldn't receive the same respect that those inside gave him, and where Armin's pacifist tendencies could have made a difference. Erwin's personality is also functional to his role as commander of the Scout Regiment, with all the relationships and institutional roles that come with it. He enjoys the trust and knowledge of all the soldiers and high-ranking officials, and after the coup, the people as well. He is the public face of the regiment, and losing him would be a severe moral and physiological blow to all of humanity. But let's not underestimate Armin's role. Many important members recognize his strategic value, including Hanji and Erwin himself. The members of the 104th Cadet Corps care deeply for him, and most importantly, he is the person closest to Eren and Mikasa, both of whom are crucial and support his survival. However, this isn't enough to outweigh the more concrete and useful advantages Erwin presented. Despite some conflicts, Eren and the others would have continued to pursue their goal without Armin, which is why I give Erwin a moderate advantage, though not a strong one, since at the time of the decision, we know that almost all the remaining soldiers are from the 104th. Now let's move on to another key point: intelligence. Both characters are exceptionally gifted. Since childhood, they've shown a keen sense of critical thinking. Erwin with his skepticism. How did humanity know there was nothing outside the walls? And Armin with his dialectical abilities and interpretation of others' behaviors. Erwin is capable of devising complex strategies, both in troop management and positioning, like the one with the horses in a wide formation, and in counterattacks and cornering the enemy, whether political or military. Some plans escape their complexity on a first or inattentive viewing of the series. For example, before the 57th expedition outside the walls, during which Annie reveals herself in Titan form, Erwin prepares a trap with some brilliant steps, starting with several observations. 1. There are sentient Titans, and it's clear that the colossal and armored Titans are such. 2. The attack on Trost didn't continue because Eren's transformation was an unexpected event. The fact that the enemy realized this suggests the presence of one or more spies among the soldiers. If you recall, during the first attack on Shiganshina, the colossal Titan breached the outer gate, and only after some time did the armored Titan appear to break the inner one. 3. At this point, it's clear that the primary enemy is human, even more so after the criminal killing of the Titans captured for experiments. 4. They're likely targeting Eren, as he's the strongest weapon available to the people within the walls. Remember, he believes there are more humans outside, and he's probably deduced that the sentient Titans all come from there, except for Eren. Based on these observations, he devises a plan to capture an enemy sentient Titan. First, he has trapping mechanisms placed in the forest outside the walls, and informs the 104th cadets that there's a secret underground room hiding crucial information. He does this to put pressure on the enemy, forcing them to act quickly. Shortly after, he announces the 57th expedition using the wide formation, and gives each group different information about Eren's location, suspecting an internal spy. Thanks to this, they would be able to identify the spy based on their actions. He positions all the troops in the trees surrounding the forest to attract the Titans there. This would allow Erwin's team to advance in a straight line and lure the sentient Titan into the trap. It's an incredibly ingenious plan, and I'm using it only as an example. I might make a video later discussing all of Erwin's and Armin's plans in depth. We could also mention the coup d'etat. But even when it comes to devising strategies on the fly, Erwin is always ready to find the best solution, thanks also to his temperament. For example, when Rod's Titan is heading toward the walls, he figures out that it doesn't have an open mouth, as it was covering it, and decides to attack from there. When they're completely blocked in a pincer attack at Shiganshina, he comes up with a way to kill the beast Titan. Can Armin compete with him? Let's start by acknowledging that he often understands Erwin's intentions, or at least senses that there's more going on. Compared to him, Armin devises strategies much more quickly, but that's primarily due to his role. The commander must have an overall view and plan for the long term. So let's focus on comparable traits. Even though Armin could probably handle that task just as well, he comes up with numerous strategies based on truly brilliant insights and observations. He realizes that Eren would be able to close the breach in Trost with the boulder, deduces that the walls were created using Titan hardening because they show no grooves or joints, and that part of them are hollow, meaning Bertholdt and Reiner could be hiding inside. When the colossal Titan wastes energy, he notices it slimming down and devises a plan to defeat it. He remembers every single detail of Marco's maneuvering gear, and thanks to that deduces that Annie is the female Titan. Perhaps he has a photographic memory, and many other brilliant insights, all put to good use. And let's not forget that he suffers from stress, often because he understands the situation better than anyone else. And with experience, he could become even faster and more effective. He takes a bit of time to come up with a plan to defeat the Colossal. Additionally, he has the ability to mediate thanks to both cognitive and emotional empathy, along with his verbal skills, and can also lie when necessary. He does so cleverly when the female Titan is about to kill Jean, saying, "Avenge that damn fool who was just in a hurry to die," to confuse her and thus both save Jean and discover that she was part of the 104th, as the meaning of those words was known only to them. Regarding this parameter, I believe Armin is slightly to moderately superior to Erwin, also because he notices things that Erwin could have seen as well, whereas the reverse almost never happens. Moreover, Armin is not yet in a position to fully express his potential, unlike Erwin, and with the upcoming unknown threats, the situation favors him. Now we come to replaceability. We need to ask ourselves if, looking at the characteristics assigned so far, we can find someone who possesses them and can use them to minimize the loss. Let's start, as always, with Erwin. Regarding his personality, I can think of one person who could almost fully replace him. The very person responsible for making the choice, Captain Levi. He has determination, authority, charisma, composure, and calm in battle, thanks to his immense Titan-slaying skills. In terms of role, he's not as replaceable, but we have Hanji, who Erwin himself named as the next commander of the regiment. Hanji also has excellent knowledge, already holds the position of squad leader, and leads the scientific research. Additionally, she has worked closely with all the surviving soldiers. As for intelligence, we have Armin, who could replace him at least in observation and immediate strategy. Even though we have no evidence of his ability to plan extended military campaigns given a more central role, I doubt he wouldn't be able to with his cognitive abilities, combined with Hanji's experience. As for Armin, there are aspects of his personality that no one could replace, such as his strong empathy, which isn't always a purely positive trait, and his tendency to mediate. The same goes for his role as Eren and Mikasa's closest friend. As for intelligence, he is the best, and only Erwin could partially replace him, though we've seen he's inferior in this area. I believe Armin has a significant advantage here, and Erwin is far more replaceable. Even Erwin himself admits this, though in relation to Eren, and well, the difference is even more pronounced there. Still, just because he said it doesn't mean it's true. Parameters I haven't considered up to this point are strength or physical endurance and technical skill in killing titans. I believe Erwin has the advantage here, and his arm would regenerate once he became a titan shifter. But let me briefly explain why these factors won't be decisive. First of all, we don't have definitive proof that one is actually better than the other in technique. I think Erwin is more skilled because Armin has never shown any particular combat prowess, while Erwin has a lot of experience. As for endurance and strength, we see that during cadet training, Armin is the only one panting for breath. But the second reason is that, from this point onward, whoever is saved will possess the power of the Colossal Titan, and that will likely be their primary function. Moreover, Erwin is aging, so his performance would decline significantly in the coming years. These are the reasons why I'm excluding these factors from the balance. Before concluding, I want to thank you for making it this far and invite you to share your opinion in the comments and subscribe for more content, including on Attack on Titan. Now let's weigh everything to try to reach a final verdict. We said that Erwin has a moderate advantage in terms of personality. For his role, it's the same. As for intelligence, Armin has a low to medium advantage, and in terms of replaceability, he has a significant advantage, assuming that for each degree of difference we give 1 point. So 1 for slight, 2 for moderate, and 3 for significant. The result would be 4.5 to 4 in favor of Armin. Of course, other methods of evaluation could be adopted, weighting some parameters more than others, but in my opinion, all 4 are fundamental and interconnected. In any case, my choice ultimately falls, though only slightly, on Armin.